The torn dress uniform in the young soldier's hand wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was the last memento from his father, a hero who had died in service. The only person who could possibly fix it in time for the ceremony was the quiet old tailor in the corner, a man seen as a waste of time by his greedy boss. But what no one knew was that the uniform belonged to a hero who was about to be honored as the Soldier of the Year. Elias Vance was a master of a dying art, a ghost living in the world of fast fashion and disposable clothing. At 78, his world had shrunk to the dimensions of his small, cluttered workstation at the back of Finch's Fine Dry Cleaning, a place that smelled of harsh chemical solvents and the quiet desperation of forgotten garments. His tools were old, ancient shears that had belonged to his father, a cast-iron Singer sewing machine that hummed like a sleeping giant, and a collection of military-grade threads in a locked wooden box that he cherished more than any earthly possession. The shop's owner, Mr. Finch, was a man who measured success in dollars per hour. He saw Elias's meticulous, time-consuming work as an unfortunate but necessary evil, a relic from a bygone era. He kept Elias around only because no one else could handle the delicate, high-stakes repair jobs that sometimes came through the door. What Finch didn't know, and couldn't possibly comprehend, was that Elias had once been the Master Tailor for the U.S. Army's most elite ceremonial unit, the Old Guard. He had tailored the uniforms of generals, presidents and fallen heroes being laid to rest at Arlington. Every stitch he made was a silent prayer, a mark of respect for the soldier who would wear it. He retired abruptly after his own son, David, a soldier himself, never returned from his last deployment. Working at Finch's amidst the steam and the chemicals was his self-imposed penance, his way of staying connected to the world of honor he had once known. A world that had taken everything from him. That rainy Thursday evening, just minutes before closing, the shop's bell jingled, a jarring sound in the weary silence. A young soldier, Sergeant Alex Rios, rushed in, his face a mask of controlled panic. He was holding a wadded-up mess of Army service uniform blue fabric. A jagged, ugly tear ran across the chest, right through a row of service ribbons that told a story of courage under fire. "Please," Alex pleaded, his voice trembling slightly. "You have to help me. The ceremony is tomorrow night. This was my father's uniform. It's all I have left of him." Mr. Finch emerged from the back office, his eyes immediately sizing up the situation, not with empathy, but with avarice. "A rush job on a military uniform? And look at this mess," he sneered, prodding the fabric with a chubby finger. "That's going to be triple the price. Special handling fee. $300, cash, up front." Alex's shoulders slumped, the hope draining from his face. "300? Sir, I don't get paid until next week. I can give you 50 now, everything I have." Finch let out a cruel, barking laugh. 50? Kid, my time is worth more than that. This is a business, not a charity. No money, no service. He turned to walk away, dismissing the soldier and his sacred heirloom as if he were a piece of trash. Elias, who had been watching from his corner, felt a familiar cold ache in his chest. In the young soldier's desperation, he saw his own son David, so proud and nervous before his first dress parade. He saw the honor of the uniform, a symbol of a sacred promise, being desecrated and dismissed for pocket change. He stood up, his old bones protesting, and stepped forward, his movement slow but deliberate. "I will fix it," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the unshakable weight of authority. Finch spun around, his face contorted in disbelief. "You'll what?" "We're closing, Elias, and certainly not for free." Elias looked past Finch, directly at the uniform, then met the young soldier's eyes. A fire he hadn't felt in years ignited in his soul. "I will stay tonight, and there will be no charge." Before Finch could erupt, Elias gently took the uniform from Alex's hands, handling it with a reverence that silenced the room. "Go home, Sergeant," he said softly. "Come back tomorrow morning. It will be ready. I give you my word." Alex looked at the old man, a wave of immense gratitude washing over his face. He didn't know why, but he trusted this stranger completely. After Finch left, grumbling about wasting time on sentimental nonsense, Elias was left alone in the silent shop. He laid the uniform out on his workbench under the glow of a single, warm lamp. This wasn't just a repair, it was a restoration. It was an act of communion with his past, with his son, with the very idea of service that had defined his life. But you won't believe this. He didn't just use regular thread. He unlocked his old wooden box, the one that held his past, and took out a spool of the same silk blend thread used for generals' uniforms, a spool he had kept for over 30 years. He worked through the entire night, his old hands moving with a fluid, practiced grace. Each stitch was perfect, a tiny invisible weld that disappeared into the fabric. He wasn't just closing a tear, he was mending a legacy. He imagined his own son wearing this uniform. He thought of Alex's father, the man who had worn it before him. He worked not with thread and needle, but with memory and honor. He reinforced the seams, polished the brass buttons until they shone like captured stars, and steamed the fabric until it was flawless. As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows through the shop's dusty window, the uniform looked not just repaired, but reborn. It was a masterpiece of quiet devotion. The next morning Alex returned. When Elias presented the uniform, the young soldier was speechless. It was perfect. The tear was completely gone, as if it had never existed. "Sir, how can I ever repay you?" he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. Elias simply placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your service is payment enough. Now, go and make your father proud." But the moment of peace was shattered when Mr. Finch arrived, his mood as sour as the chemical smell in the air. He saw the perfect uniform, and his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Did he pay you?" he demanded of Elias. "There is no charge," Elias replied calmly. Finch exploded. "No charge? You spent all night working, using my electricity, my space for free, for some sob story?" He turned on Elias, his voice dripping with contempt. "You and your pathetic sentimentality. This is why you'll always be a nobody working for me." He then uttered the words that would seal his own fate. "You're fired, Elias. Pack your things and get out. I want you gone in 5 minutes." Elias didn't argue. He simply nodded, a look of profound sadness on his face, and began to slowly, deliberately pack his old tools. He hadn't seen the biggest surprise yet. That evening, at a grand military ball filled with decorated officers and their families, Sergeant Alex Rios stood on a brightly lit stage. He had just been awarded the Soldier of the Year medal for an act of incredible bravery overseas, the very act during which his uniform had been torn. After receiving the medal from a 4-star general, the commanding officer of the entire region, Alex stepped to the microphone. He spoke of his team, his duty, and his father. Then, his voice thick with emotion, he said something that wasn't in his prepared speech. And it was at this exact moment that everything changed. "I shouldn't be standing here tonight," Alex said, his voice echoing through the silent, cavernous hall. My father's uniform, was badly damaged. I was told it was impossible to fix in time, but a man, a quiet hero who works in a small dry-cleaning shop, saw more than a torn piece of fabric. He saw a legacy. He worked all night, without asking for a dime, and with hands that seemed guided by an angel, he made it whole again. He told me my service was payment enough. "But, sir," Alex said, turning to the general, "men like him? Their honor is the reason men like me are proud to serve." "This award is as much his as it is mine," the hall erupted in thunderous applause. The general, visibly moved by the story, asked Alex for the name and address of the shop. The next morning, as Mr. Finch was arrogantly telling a customer how he'd finally gotten rid of his unprofitable old tailor, a black car with a government license plate pulled up outside. The 4-star general from the ceremony walked in his full-dress uniform. Finch nearly fainted. The general wasn't there to drop off his laundry. He was there with an offer. The U.S. Army had a massive exclusive contract to maintain and repair all ceremonial uniforms for the entire state. A contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. A contract he was there to personally offer to the Master Tailor his young soldier had spoken of with such reverence. "I believe his name is Elias Vance," the general said, his voice like ice as he looked at Finch. "But it seems he no longer works here." Finch's world crumbled. He had not just fired a tailor. He had fired a legend and thrown away a fortune. the general found Elias at his small apartment. He didn't just offer him the contract. He helped him set up his own workshop, a place where other retired military artisans could come to practice their craft with the dignity they deserved. Finch's business withered, his reputation ruined by his own greed. And Elias, the quiet hero, spent the rest of his days doing what he loved, not just stitching fabric, but mending the very soul of honor, one uniform at a time. Kindness and merit are recorded, even when they go unnoticed. To continue hearing stories that prove it, don't forget to follow the Merit Ledger and leave a comment about a time when a small act of kindness made a huge difference. Because every life is a record worth reading.